Can you introduce yourself and how you got involved with this?
Okay.
Yeah.
My name is Jerry Harper, and I've known John and Lisa for about 16, 17 years. And before I retired from work, I used to come in and have coffee and some of their homemade pastries and sandwiches and soups. Then after I retired, John asked me about, helping him out in case he was sick or was in an accident, to have somebody to back him up. So I started out to be a part-time roaster. That was 5 years ago, going on into my 6th year now. And now John is my backup. I do most of the roasting, and if I've got to be out or something, John will roast, so he can keep up with his trade, okay? But John taught me how to roast, and then I'm going on the internet and reading different articles about how to improve, what do you do to make a bean better? What do you do to make a bean worse? How do you develop the flavors and all? And like I say, the internet has a lot of good information. And then you get into it, and then you do a little bit of experimentation yourself to see, how to enhance the flavor, or sometime maybe when you let a batch get away from you, then you see what it does to over roast or something like that. But like I say, it's a way to get me out of the house. I'm retired, and so it gets me out of the house, and then it's just a wonderful place here to work and meet all the people every day. And so it's my social event for the day. Okay. Well, I stood on it this morning.
I've never seen raw coffee beans before.
Yeah, this is Tanzanian peaberry. You can see that's actually an inferior bean. A cherry is supposed to have 2 of these. These just have 1, and they're small. And then this is I guess a typical, and that's Sadamo. But you can see the difference in them.
And you mix those?
Well, we roast everything individually. And we do make blends, but we blend them after we've roasted them.
That tell you when you're up to heat?
Tell me when I'm up to 370. texture of where I want the gas to cut off. Also adjust the gas level so I don't roast too fast or too slow. Now keep a record on it.
I can smell that right away. I can smell that right away.
Yeah, I left this off. You gotta close that up. But this is pulling air that comes up through here and goes through the roaster, goes down the backside, comes down around through here, and then the smoke goes out through there. And you can see it right here, right there. If we're going to change color, we're going to go to what we call a cinnamon color, and then we'll finally go to the roasted color again.
How long does that take?
It takes about a minute per pound. It will vary a little bit. Now we preheated this to 450 degrees, but then when you put the cold beans in, it knocks it down to about 160 degrees, and then it's going to slowly come back up. But you've got the impinging gas now goes through it down with the door. And that's heating the drum from one end to the other. And it's rotating and keeping the beans turned over all the time. So while that's roasting, we do other things.
All right.
We get another load ready. See, each bean looks a little bit different. See, the color of that one's different.
Mm-hmm.
You just sit and wait on it now.
That's the tiring part of the job.
Well, after you get going, if I'm going to flavor beans or something, I'll do other things during that, or if I'm going to mix them together to make blends, well, I'll mix them while I'm letting this roast. But you got to make sure, and that's one good thing about the buzzer. If I'm off somewhere else, then the buzzer tells me that, hey, it's time to get back. Because within just a few minutes after that goes off, then it's going to be at the point of where I want it to roast.
Now how do you just do it by time, or do you go by color, or?
Well, do by time and color. Like I say, that's the reason I adjust the gas and the cutoff temperature for the gas, so that I stop adding heat. Because once I get through what we call the first pop, and the first pop is like in popcorn, the beans get hot enough that the moisture in them start creating steam, and that makes it pop, and the bean actually grows. You'll see that when they come out. You see how small they are now?
Yeah.
And then when it goes through that first pop, where you'll hear it, the bean actually expands. And then that's all an endothermic reaction. You're actually adding heat to it to cause that to happen. Once that starts happening and you go into the second pop, then you got an exothermic, or it's giving off heat because of the oils coming out and burning. And then that's when we start getting a dark, rich color, you know. And the flavor, you get past the raw bean taste. This will go to what we call a cinnamon color, kind of a brownish color, and you'll see the beans get into that color. And then when we really start getting into the last part of the roast, then we are actually charring or burning the sugars and all to make it come up dark color then. And as you roast, you reduce the sweetness, and you also reduce the acidity of the bean. And each bean has a different acidity and amount of sugars, because there's so many different chemical compounds in a bean, and you're changing all those as you apply heat to them. And see, I can sample it here to see when the beans. You usually have to take 2 or 3 dips out, because the ones right up against the front end of this don't get roasted quite as well sometimes. But you see that bean turning that cinnamon color. I've got 2 thermometers. This one is reading this, which is down in the beans, and tell me what temperature is down in the beans. And then this one is reading the air temperature coming across the top of the bean. Ambeck.
There's so much different than these two.
This is coming from Ethiopia, and this is coming from, this one is Indonesian Sumatra. So this is out on the western end of Indonesia, and this is what in the southern, mid-southern part of Africa. And the one we've got in there is actually where coffee started, is in Ethiopia. It's where the early, where they started with coffee. And it spread from there. See Ethiopia right there in the, well, I guess you call it what, central part of Africa. And then see Tanzania is right down below it there. I say right in here is where coffee came from, spread up into Europe, over to India, and then it finally came over to Central and South America, and then to other islands and all around. Second most traded commodity other than oil. The history of coffee is that in the early years it was found in Ethiopia, and some goat herders actually saw their goats acting funny, and they saw that they were eating this particular plant, and which later on became coffee. Exactly how they learned how to roast it, I think they actually had a fire of some, and some of these were burned, and that's how they found out about roasting coffee. Originally, coffee was basically declared for medicinal purposes only, and also for the rich and people that could control it and everything. Then it moved from there into Europe, but the climate was too cold, so they had to raise it in hothouses, and that became a problem when you need millions of trees, because a tree will only produce about a pound to a pound and a half of coffee per year. So when you think of the tons of coffee that are consumed, how many millions and probably billions of trees that are out there. So we're in what the Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn, around the equator, is where most of the coffee is grown, because I think it's something like 57 degrees that you got to keep the temperature above so that the plants will survive. There are two types, the Arabica and Robusta or Robusta. The Arabica is the more desirable because of the flavor and all it has. The Robusta does have a higher caffeine content, so it is used in a lot of espresso drinks because of the higher caffeine level. The thing about it is the trees, most of the foliage is kept off of them so that as much of the nutrients and all will go to raising the cherries themselves. And you have a cherry because it turns red, and when it's red that means it's time to pick. And in that cherry you normally find two seeds or the coffee beans. First step, after you pick it, then you got to depulp it, take the outer skin and the pulp off, and get that off of the bean. Then you wash the beans, and then they put them normally out on concrete pads to be dried, and they'll take and turn them from time to time so that the beans dry. There are two types of ways of cleaning beans. In the more arid areas or dry areas where there's a shortage of water, you have the dry process where they have water available. Then they actually use water to wash the beans to help get the pulp and everything off of it. Drying, some of it now in modern days is done mechanically, but most of it still is done out on concrete pads and where it's turned until it dries. Then it's sold to a broker or to some corporation to be distributed around the world. And we buy the beans through a broker, and we buy probably about 16 different regulars and got about a half a dozen of decaf. And most of the decaffeinization is done in Germany or Canada. And all of that caffeine then is sold to put in Coke products and other type things like that. Then in our process, after we buy the beans, we roast each individual bean separately because each one of them has a little bit different roasting characteristics. And we do that through with what we have now is a 30-pound Ambex roaster. It is natural gas fired or heated underneath the drum. Rotates and pulls air across the beans, and we will adjust a little bit of amount of gas we have also the time based on whether we want a light city roast, full city roast, French roast, or an Italian roast. And all of these are basically just charring or caramelizing the sugars that are in it. And once we get it to the level we want it, then we take it out, put it into the cooling area of the roaster, and then we start drawing air across the beans to cool it so that the beans will not keep on roasting. If you don't cool them, they'll sit there in the temperature they have, and the fact that they're actually in an exothermic reaction, they will continue to roast and go too far for it. And like I say, after we get to the point, then we cool it and get the beans to cool, and then from that point on we'll either sell them as individual beans or we'll sell them as a blend of 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever you want to put in. And when you start blending beans, each bean has its own particular taste or palate. And when you blend beans, then you start getting a wider palette or a wider range of flavors within that blend. And then on like espresso, we want to develop one that will have what we call crema, which is the foamy part that comes out of the espresso machine when you're pulling a shot for an espresso type drink.
Excellent.
Okay?
Thank you very much.
So this air temperature is coming up, and then the bean temperature is coming up. By keeping them rotating and tumbling, pulling air through them, that makes all the beans roast more uniformly.
I see they're really starting to get dark in there.
Right. As you hear the gas turn off, you hear the change. That was the gas turning on.
I mean, it's
Got
still
a
timing.
temperature. I can set the temperature at different levels, and I'll show you on this one right here. We're actually going to take it on up to a higher temperature, and I'll let that take it on up so that I can get it up to the level. Now the temperature keeps on increasing. Like say now, because the beans are roasting, giving off the gases and the oil, it's turning into an exothermic reaction. So it's giving off heat. Now this is perforated, got another fan pulls air through it. This rotates and stirs it, and you cool it. Temperature, and when it gets to that temperature, then I'm going to dump it out. But I've also watched it here, and it has the right color. That's what we call city. Because all the beans are pretty much the same color. Yeah, that's the reason you got to keep it clean and keep the air flowing. you lose about 15% of the beans, either in chaff or in moisture. But like I say now, I'm going to lose about, what, 15, 3 pounds. So I only end up with about 17 pounds of roasted coffee. The higher you take the roast, the more you're going to lose. That tells me if I'm out in the front to get back here and see how the beans are beginning to roast.
I could see this browning just watching it in the last few seconds.
Well, you caramelize in the sugar. So we're getting about ready to come out here. It's all about 10 seconds away from done. I can tell the machine is not clean is that the beans will start being unevenly roasted.
Oh, right.
So that's the reason I have to clean it first thing every day. Well, if I'm going for a real long period of time, if I'm roasting on over to this afternoon, I probably would want to stop and clean it to make sure that I'm getting a good airflow.
So when you're cleaning it, what are you doing? What are you cleaning?
Well, all of this chaff and stuff that you're seeing, like this, is coming off of the bean. That's the skin coming off of the bean itself. The bean has a skin on it, and that's what that is. And that comes loose, and then it either is picked up in the airflow from the drum and is collected down here, or while it's here cooling, it goes through the perforation and falls underneath there. The thing about all the beans have different flavors or different things that you can taste within them, and this is due to the growing season, whether it's dry or wet or extremely hot or cooler, also due to the minerals and all that are in the soil. I guess the example I use is like a Vidalia onion. I buy a Vidalia onion set and I grow it here in Carter County, and it tastes one way, but if I get it down in Vidalia, Georgia, because of the difference of the minerals, that onion is going to taste totally different than one I would grow here, even though it's the same onion set. So the same way, even though the same Arabica type plant is being used, because of the different growing seasons, the different minerals in the soil, then each coffee has a different flavor or palate, and you'll hear them say that it's got a chocolate flavor, or it may have a nutty taste, and again, this is due to the minerals that are in the soil that is absorbed into that particular bean. So that's the reason we have different ones now. Organic is basically trying to be eco-friendly, and then also being fair trade. Fair trade is where we're trying to buy coffees that is giving more of the money back to the grower rather than the wholesaler or retailer, is that you're trying to help out the grower to get more of the profit from growing the crop. Because normally you'll have a big corporation comes in and buys the beans, and then they will distribute them around the world. The beauty we have here at this coffee shop is the fact that we have the raw beans, and we have something like 15, 16 different varieties, but we also do our own roasting, and through that then we can customize the roast to whatever our clientele wants, or to develop what we feel like are good tasting coffees. So we can do that individually.
Fine-tune it. Can you talk a little bit about the business end on who you provide coffee to? And
locally, we have developed, say, within a 50-mile radius, so local coffee houses, and we supply coffee to them. But like say through some of the students that come to East Tennessee State, Milligan College, and they have worked here, then they know about us, and they will order coffee, and we ship coffee to different places all over the United States. They know about our coffee and know how we try to keep it turning over, keep it fresh. Because that's the other thing too in coffee, that once you get coffee that's roasted today, in fact you need to let it sit for probably 24 hours or so before you actually will brew it to allow it to stabilize. But then after that, then you want to probably brew it within 2 weeks to get the maximum freshness and the flavor out of it that you can. And that's the difference in our coffee and most other coffees. Is the time it's roasted, goes through distribution, on a shelf at a grocery store and you buying it and getting it to your house, well then it's aged for, you know, a pretty good while. And here, like I said, we're roasting 2 days a week, or we can roast more often if we have to make sure that we keep the coffees turning over that we have on our shelves, and we're sending it out to our customers, and they're getting it within the week after we roast it.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Well, any last words of wisdom for anything you can think of we didn't hit on?
Well, it's been good to meet you.
Thank you very much.